بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. First, I congratulate you for the birth anniversary of the Prophet and Imam Sadiq, and I hope that inshallah we would be blessed in this day and night with more lights and more ma'rifah inshallah coming to us through the Prophet and the Imam inshallah. As you remember, we started the discussion about mental existence, al-wujud al-dhihni, and we already had some discussion about it. The idea is that whenever we know something, our knowledge of things, according to philosophers, is something that relates to our mind. And what is in our mind has to correspond to what is outside. Of course, there are other theories about truth, but the most acceptable theory, and the one which is accepted by Muslim philosophers, is correspondence theory. It says that what is true has to correspond to the external or objective reality. So if in my mind I say, or you don't need to say it, you form this judgment that A is standing. It's in your mind. If in the real world also A is standing, then this is true. But if in your mind is A is standing and in the real world A is sitting, this is not true, this is false. So that image that you have in mind should correspond to the real world. Muslim philosophers and theologians have had different ideas about how to explain this. For example, a famous theologian who has been very critical of philosophy and raised lots of questions against philosophy is Fakhruddin al-Razi, and he is called Imamul Mushakkikin, the leader of those who raise doubt. Yes, he's not just Imamul Shakkin, Imamul Mushakkikin, so he creates doubts. But Ayatollah Mutahari says his critics of philosophy has actually helped Islamic philosophy to grow, because when Muslim philosophers were faced with these questions and doubts and objections, in order to defend philosophy, they had to develop their ideas further.
Fakhruddin Razi, who has a tafsir of Quran.
Yes, Tafsir al-Kabir. When you are in a situation that everyone appreciates you and praises you, then there is a chance that you may become lazy. You may become, just relaxed, because no one is challenging you. Whatever you say, they accept. So it's very good that you have also people who challenge you and question you. Okay? Of course, they shouldn't do it too much, because then it can, totally make you not able to function, and that can damage your confidence. You know, if someone is not well established and too many questions, like for example, a new teacher or a new leader of the community, a new alim, for example, a resident alim, if too many questions, too many objections, that person can never function. But a healthy criticism is good. Healthy objection is good. A balanced criticism and praise is very good, because you understand that you have some strong points and you have also some areas that either you have to correct yourself or you have to present yourself better or you have to understand better, So, the objections helped philosophy to grow. Anyway, Fakhr al-Razi, when it comes to knowledge, has the idea that nothing comes to our mind when we know an objective reality, For example, I see you today or tonight, okay? I know you exist. Salam alaikum. I know you exist, I know you are listening carefully, and these are things that I know. Fakhr al-Razi says, when you know these things, nothing has come to your mind. So that we discuss whether what is in your mind in correspondence with the reality or not. He says, al-ilmu huwa nisbatun. He says, knowledge is just a matter of relation. I have now a kind of relation with you, or you can say a kind of encounter if you like, but he says nisba, relation, encounter. This relation is knowledge. If you were not here, or I was not here, or I was looking at the wall behind me, I didn't have that relation which we call knowledge. So according to him, nothing is in my mind. It's just the relation between me and you. Okay? This was his idea. And there are many other ideas that inshallah we mention gradually. But Muslim philosophers, especially people who follow Mullah Sadra, they are very clear that we have images in our mind. And these images may correspond, may match the reality outside, or may not match. If they match, they are true. If they don't match, they are not true. Okay? So, there are few arguments in the book for proving that we have mental existence, al-wujud al-dhihni. The first argument, when you make a judgment in the sentence, you say, Zaydun qa'imun. Zayd is standing. Okay? How can you say that standing is a quality for Zayd without you conceiving Zayd? It's not possible. You must have something in your mind about whom you bring the predicate of standing. Or, for example, you say a mountain of gold is heavier than a mountain of stone. If you have a mountain of gold and the same size stone. When we were children, one question was, is 1 kilo iron heavier or 1 kilo cotton?
Same.
Did you have the same question?
Yeah, it's the same, but just the volume is different.
Yes. So many people think 1 kilo of iron is heavier than 1 kilo of cotton, yeah? This one. But 1 kilo is the same. But here the question is not 1 kilo, it's the same size. One mountain of gold and one mountain of stone. Which one is heavier? Gold is heavier. So, if you say one mountain of gold is heavier than your one hill, for example, is heavier, you have to be able to conceive these things in your mind. There must be an existence for them somewhere. Outside, we don't have mountain of gold. So, then how can you talk about this? It means that you have to have the ability of having an image or concept of this in your mind. So, any judgment that we make about a subject and predicate, whether it be affirmative or negative, salebe or mujebe, shows that they are first in our mind. Or for example, sometimes we have concepts in our mind and we use them as universal concepts, kulli. For example, you talk about human beings in general, not a particular human being. You are not talking about Zaid or Hassan or other people. You are talking about human beings in general. Like al-insanu, for example, haywanat. This al-insan as a universal concept does not exist anywhere in the world. Because what we have in the real world, in the objective, external world, we have instances of human being. You don't have kulli of human being, universal human being outside. Anything which comes outside has to be individuated. But in the mind we have kulli. Or, for example, sarfu shay. You know sarfu shay? A concept in its simplicity. For example, just whiteness. Whiteness. Salaam alaikum. Not white paper, not white dress, not white plaster, not white dress. Just whiteness. Do you have whiteness in the external world? No. In the external world, we have whiteness always with something. We cannot have whiteness, as such, simply whiteness. So, when you talk about whiteness, it means that there must be a realm in which this concept exists, and that is mind, because it cannot be outside. Sarfu shay. And if you remember, one of the arguments we had for Tawheed was sarfu shay la yatathanna wa la yatakarrar. If you have just existence without any addition, without being combined with anything, it cannot be two or three. Sarfu shay la yatathanna wa la yatakarrar. Okay. After bringing these arguments, now let's see what problems have been mentioned, what objections have been raised against this issue. There are several problems, but in the book it says the most important problem is the problem of bringing two things together which seem to be contradictory. Are you listening, yeah? From one aspect, we said whatever is in our mind should correspond to the reality that it represents, it reflects. For example, if I have an image of a human being, I have an image of a horse, a flower, image of my car, my house, my book, that image should be image of that thing. So image of my car is different from image of your car, or image of my car is different from image of my book. Yeah? Every image is identical with what it represents. So if it is a Johar, then that image to correspond to that Johar should be Johar. If it is Araz, it has to be Araz. Then among Araz accidents, we have 9 types of accidents, yeah? Kam, Kaif, Mata, Ain, and Yaf'al, and Yanfa'il, Idafe, Jeda. You know these things. So, on the one side, this knowledge that I have, this mental image that I have, should correspond to the realities, and realities are different. They belong to different categories. Gens, fast are different. On the other hand, philosophers say, or most of the philosophers say, like Muslim philosophers, they say that the knowledge that you have in your mind is a quality for your mind. So your mind is like a substance, your nafs is a substance, and this is a quality, kaif, psychic quality for your nafs. So the question now is how we can put these two together. One thing, this mental image in the one side is, if it is for example for human being, it's haywan and natiq. If it is for example a flower, is something else. If it is a, I don't know, quantity, is something else. If it is a, for example, quality, something else. So there are different possibilities. But on the other hand, because it is knowledge, and knowledge is always kaif, it's a psychic quality. It's an araz, an accident for the soul. So which one we should accept? If we want it to be true, it has to correspond and match the same categories that these things belong to. But on the other hand, it's knowledge, and knowledge is a quality for us. So the problem is tadakhulul maqulatain, two categories would be applying to the same thing. Your knowledge of the book has to be a book, but at the same time has to be a mental image, which is a kaif. Book is not a kaif, book is a johar, is a substance. This is a very important problem. If you want to understand this problem, you can go a step by step. One step is that whenever we have knowledge, something comes in my mind. There is something in my mind. We are talking, of course, about ilm husuli. I don't need to repeat that this is about ilm husuli, not about ilm huzuri. Ilm huzuri, what is known is present to the knower. It is al-ilm al-husuli, which is حضور الصورة المعلوم لدى العالم, not حضور المعلوم لدى العالم. Yeah? Al-ilm al-huduri, knowledge by presence, is the presence of what is known for the knower. But al-ilm al-husuli is that the concept, the image of what is known is present. Okay. So the first step, something is in my mind. Fakhr Razi, to stop this problem, attack the first principle. Nothing is your mind. We were talking that what is in my mind, has to belong to two categories. Fakhr Razi says, don't worry, there is nothing in your mind. Your mind is empty. Okay. So, this is one way of solving the problem. But this is not acceptable, because you know that you have images in your mind, you have knowledge in your mind. And also, if you say knowledge is only relation, so what about relation with the things that do not exist outside? For example, something which is universal doesn't exist outside. Something which is negational doesn't exist outside. Something which is simple, basit, surf, We don't see it outside. So the idea of Fakhr Razi is not acceptable. The other thing is the idea of Fazil Qushji. Fazil Qushji or Qushji in Arabic, because in Arabic there is no che. Yeah. Fazil Qushji is a Sunni scholar who is a mutakallim, and he has a commentary, a famous commentary on Tajreed of Khajeh. And because Tajreed is a book that has been received very well by Sunni and Shia. There are tens of commentaries on Tajreed al-I'tiqad. The one that we read in the Hawza is Kashf al-Murad by Allama Hilli, but there are many, many other commentaries. Fazil Qushji says that when something is known to us, please listen carefully so that you can understand. When something is known to us, it means that you have an image of it in your mind. That image is identical with the external reality. It belongs to the same category. But that image has a kind of shadow, makes a shadow, a mark on your mind. That is your knowledge. If you want to understand it better, imagine you have a crystal container. You put something in that crystal container, and then shadow of that appears on the surface of crystal. Knowledge is that shadow, which is kayf nafsani. But that object which is in crystal can be an apple, can be a piece of wood, can be a piece of stone, whatever it is, it's different from kayf nafsani. So he says, you have something in your mind and you have an image or a shadow of it, which is your knowledge. And this is kayf nafsani. So he accepted that something is our mind, but tried to say that there are two things, not one thing. Because the problem was how one thing can be both kayf nafsani and at the same time belong to the same category that objective reality has. But this is not acceptable because we believe that there is only one thing in our mind, not two things.
So, just to clarify, so
Yes.
there's two things in our mind. One is the actual image which corresponds to reality, the actual true knowledge. And the other thing is like an imprint or a shadow of this, which is what we perceive as our knowledge.
Yeah.
So there are two things, the reality and what was our knowledge, which is based
Not the external reality.
No, not the external.
Yeah, an internal reality, an image, and the shadow of it or imprint of it on your mind. This is not acceptable. The other idea is, again, which is not acceptable. They say, no, there is something in your mind, unlike Fakhr Razi. And there is only one thing in your mind, unlike Fazil Qushji. Okay? There is something in your mind, unlike whom? Fakhr Razi. And it's only one thing in your mind, unlike Fazil Qushji. But they say there is a transformation. Transformation takes place. When something is outside, it belongs to different categories. You have a horse which is حيوان الساحل. But when horse comes to your mind, is transformed into كيف نفساني. So it's no longer a horse. But then the problem is, how do you then explain truth? Because it has to correspond. If you say it's no longer horse, then why you say I know horse? So you don't know horse. You don't have any idea about horse. This is the idea of Sayyid Sadr al-Shirazi, Sayyid Sadruddin al-Shirazi, not Shahid Sadr, this is before. Sayyid Sadruddin al-Shirazi, which we don't accept.
Is he called Sadr al-Muta'allihin?
No. Sadr al-Muta'allihin is not Sayyid. It comes later. Then Muhaqqiq Dawani. Muhaqqiq Dawani also has another idea. He says, there is something in your mind, and not two, and no transformation, because those who wanted to transform, they say everything becomes kayf and afsani. He says no, everything remains what it is outside. There is no kayf and afsani. So the problem of how something can be kayf and afsani and another thing, he solved it by saying it's not kayf and afsani. It's only the same thing which is outside. So if you have an image of flower, it belongs to one category. If it's an image of, for example, a bird, belongs to another. Of course, these are going back to Johar, but for example, if you have time, you have quantity, like line, like dot, all belong to different things as outside. Inside, there is no kayf and afsan, which is wrong. Because if this is no kayf and afsan, then how can it belong to me? The final answer is the answer that Mullah Sadr Muta'allihin Shirazi gave, rahmatullah alayh. He says, something is your mind, and it is only one, and it's not transformed, because it has to correspond to the reality. It's not also something which is not a quality for me. No, it's a quality for me, at the same time corresponds to the external realities. Then you may say, how? How something can be them too? Then he introduces a very, very important distinction. If you can make this distinction, then it means that you have good chance in studying philosophy. If you don't make this distinction, then what? Pardon? No. It means it's too early to say whether you have chance or not. And still you can be hopeful. Okay, but if you make the distinction, I can say you have chance in philosophy. He distinguishes between two types of haml, which is haml awwali zati, or in Arabic al-haml al-awwali al-zati, and haml al-sha'i al-sana'i, or al-haml al-sha'i al-sana'i. Al-zati and al-sha'i al-sana'i. What does it mean? What does it mean? Sometimes you talk about something and you are only concerned about it as a concept. But sometimes you are talking about something and you are concerned about it not as a concept, as what it refers to. For example, if I say al-juz'i, we have every concept is either kulli or juz'i, universal or particular. You know what is juz'i? Yeah, what is particular? The technical meaning of juz'i is what? it's a concept that cannot be applied to more than one case. Yeah. ما يمتنع صدقه على كثيرين. الجزئي ما يمتنع صدقه على كثيرين. Something which is impossible to be applied to more than one. Juz'i cannot be applied to kathirin, to many. It has to be applied only to one. Okay? Is wajib al-wujud kulli or juz'i? The concept of wajib al-wujud is juz'i or kulli? Who says kulli? Who says juz'i?
I think it's neither. It's neither.
No, it has to be either juz'i or kulli. We don't have.
It's walking, but it can't be juzzy. It's not a particle.
Why it's not juz'i?
Because this is-
Al-kulli ma la yamtani'u sidquhu ala kathiri.
Yes.
Kulli is the concept that is not impossible to be applied to many. Juz'i is possible. Is impossible to be applied. Yeah, juz'i is only possible to be applied to one. Kulli can be applied to many.
I see. So it must be juzzy then.
Wajibul wujud is kulli.
It's kulli.
Yes. Why? Because the concept is kulli. Then you have to prove that this concept has only one instance. There can be kulli which has only one instance. There can be kulli which have no instance. Yeah? There can be a kulli which has no instance. Yeah. So you have to be careful. It's not that anything which has only one instance is juz'i. Mafhum wajib al-wujud is kulli. Anyway, al-kulli wal-juz'i, yes.
How is it kulli? The mafhum of wajib?
Because you can have many cases, you can imagine of many cases that this concept can be applied to them. The concept doesn't show any individuality. The concept of wajib al-wujud.
But the concept of infinite.
Like the concept of khaliq. The concept of khaliq doesn't show by itself that it has to be one. You have to argue for it.
Yes, but the concept of infinite.
Actually, you study in logic and philosophy that actually no concept is juz'i, and the only way something can become juz'i is when existence is involved, because wujud is mutashakhis and brings particularity. Otherwise, concepts are all universal. Even those concepts, for example, that you think they are kulli, they are juz'i, they are kulli. It's only wujud. For example, you say, there is one chair. How many people can sit on the chair? Only one. But you will say, the person who is sitting on the chair. This is not juz'i, this is kulli. Although only one person can sit, but which person? If you say a man, not a woman, a man who is sitting on the chair, still is kulli. A man who is 30 years old who is sitting on the chair, still it's kulli. A man who is 30 kilo and 30 years. Anyway, anything you add, still it is kulli. Because adding kulli to kulli would not make it juz'i. Just can narrow it down. Okay? So, mafhum wajib al-wujud is kulli. Anyway, this is something that, inshallah, you will.
Can you give me some example of juz'i?
Juz'i, like you, me, this mobile, this book, this dress, this desk, these are juz'i.
One becomes more particular.
They cannot be applied to more than one. The image that I have of you can only be applied to you. But the image of humanity that I have can be applied to many human beings. The image of book can be applied to, but this book, the image of I have that this book can only be applied to this book. Okay.
Image of God, we cannot apply to anything but God. So how can we say
There
it
is
is
no image.
not judgy?
Yeah, but
You can't apply to anything.
but you have to prove. You have to bring extra proof to show that God can only be one. The concept by itself does not show whether it is one or two or more. You have to prove it. Okay? You have to prove. So,
So you mean one could say,
pardon?
so one could say wajib al-wujud can be more than one, unless we argue against it and prove that it's just one. That's why it's called it.
The concept has the potential of being applied to any wajibul wujud that can exist. Okay, the concept. But if wajibul wujud can only be one, then you have to argue for it, and still the concept remains kulli. Because there can be many kulli concepts that only have one case outside. Okay? For example, when you say my father, let me make it like this. My father, is it kulli or juz'i? It's kulli. My father, because father is kulli. My father is kulli. Any man can be applied to him provided that he has a relation with you. It's a kulli that has only one case. But what is that case? It can be many. You have to then, like for example, I say, there is a student here. He's a student. A student is kulli, although I am saying this man is a student. A student is kulli. Even if you say a student, still a student is kulli. And if a student was not kulli, you could not say a student.
But when
Can you say a Zayd?
when you say a
You
student,
cannot say a Zayd, because Zayd is juz'i. When you say a student, is kulli. You can say a student, two students, many students. So a student is kulli.
Sheikh, my student is kulli.
Yes.
But when you say a student, doesn't it make
So
it
a student is kulli.
Yeah, but when you put the condition of
That means one case of this kulli.
That's true.
When you say a student means one case of this kulli. Yes.
No, since we were at the point, I'd just like to ask for clarification. How do we explain the concept of infinite and infinite existence, which is what we read as infinite, not as say khaliq or as any specific, but as an infinite, limitless being? Because by as a concept, it seems you cannot have more than one. It is unlimited.
No problem.
So how do we?
So in the real world, it cannot be more than one.
Even
But the concept is kulli. Al mutanahi or Allah mutanahi. The concepts are kulli. Yes.
Like the example of my father, can we say that wajib al-wujud can be anyone who possesses these characteristics, but now we specified it, this God which has created this world is the wajib al-wujud.
So this God then is different from wajib al-wujud. This God means that you are pointing at a being.
So that is the juz'i part. But
Yes.
because
As I said, wujud always makes it particular. Wujud. Because wujud has tashakhus. Anything that exists is one. Remember this from me. Okay? So if you are asking grave, remember this. Anything in the real world is juz'i. In the real world is juz'i. We don't have kulli outside. But concepts in mind are kulli unless you attribute them to a juz'i. Like I have an image of you. Because of you are juz'i, I think that concept is also juz'i. Otherwise the concept by itself is kulli. Yes.
What's the essential definition for wajib al-wujud?
Necessary being.
No, that's a translation. The actual definition of it.
A being that by itself has to be there, has no equal relation to existence and non-existence. It's a type of being.
So we can say this is what needs to be, this is what needs to be, this is what needs to be. So it can be applied to many things, but when we specify the one,
Yeah.
then that's just the one.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. الجزئي ما يمتنع صدقه على كثيرين. Or you can say a particular is what cannot be applied to more than one. Okay? Do you accept this sentence? A particular is what cannot be applied to more than one. Okay. But you are juz'i, she is juz'i, he is juz'i, I am juz'i, this is juz'i. So we apply juz'i to more than one.
But in one instance you apply.
You said juz'i cannot be applied to more than one, but we have many juz'i, so we apply juz'i to many things.
That's the concept of juz'i.
Aha. We have real juz'i and we have concept of juz'i. Real juz'i, al-juz'i bil-haml al-shai' al-sana'i, cannot be applied to many. And actually that juz'i cannot become even a subject for the sentence. Yeah? Me and you cannot become the subject for a sentence. But the concept of juz'i can be used as a subject. The thing is that the concept of juz'i is kulli. If someone listens us, says these people are crazy. They say juz'i is kulli. But we are not crazy. This is the reality. Because the concept of juz'i is kulli. Yeah? Because it can be applied to many things. The concept of juz'i is kulli. So, sometimes you are talking about juz'i as a concept, بالحمل الأولي, then it is actually kulli. Sometimes you are talking about instances of juz'i, al-juz'i بالحمل الشائع, then that cannot be applied to more than one. Okay? So, whenever you have an image in your mind, sometimes you are talking about what that image represents. بالحمل الأولي. For example, I have an image of a rose flower in my mind. Okay? I have an image of a rose flower in my mind. This image of rose flower, is it a rose flower or it is a quality, a kayf, which is one of types of araz for me? Is the rose flower or it is a kayf and afsani? When you think of rose flower, is this image of rose flower a rose flower, which means it's a jawhar, which is, jism, qabilun lil-abad al-salasas, therefore it's a jism, and it has hayat, jism nami. Rose flower is a jawharun, qabilun lil-abad al-salasa, namin. Or it is an image which is a quality for my soul. Knowledge is a quality for the knower. So is it a rose flower or it's an image for me? We say both. It's both. Because if it was not rose flower, then how could I understand rose flower? Scientists write books about things without bringing those things in the book. Imagine if a person has written a book about ants. Yeah, there's a book about ants. Do you find ants in the books? In that book? Or no? It's
Just written.
we say, if you mean the external ants, real ants, they are not in the book. But if you mean the concept of ant, yes, this is full of ants. Because we're all talking about ants. Because the concept of ant reflects ant.
Reflex.
Ants. But itself is not ant. It's a concept. Yeah? The concept of cake is a cake. You cannot say the concept of cake is not cake. So if it's not the concept of cake, then why you say it's cake? Yeah? When you are thinking about cake, are you thinking about cake or about something else? You are thinking about cake. So it's the cake. But at the same time, it is not cake.
It's not real.
So,
Object as well as the image.
pardon? So we say there are two aspects. It is a cake in the sense that this is an image of cake, not image of something else. But it is not a cake because this is an image. This is a kayfa nafsani. This is not an object which occupies, a space. It's three-dimensional. So you have to distinguish between these two.
So كيف نفساني means an image, is it?
Pardon?
كيف نفساني means an image.
Yeah. So image is a kayfa nafsani. Kayfa nafsani means even fear, hope. These are all kayfa nafsani. Any quality that is for your soul, any psychic quality is kayfa nafsani. So, Mullah Sadra said that when we know something through ilm husuli, our mind has an image of that thing. That image by itself, if you look at the image itself, is kayfa nafsani. If you look at what this image reflects and represents, it represents different things. It can represent a human being, it can represent a horse, it can represent a flower, but when it represents something, it represents that thing. Not that it can only represent kayfa nafsani. It can represent a jawhar, it can represent kam, kayf, all 9 accidents and jawhar, which means 10 categories. Is it clear? This is why they say that ma'loom بالذات, that image is primarily known to us, and what is known through it, which is the real thing outside, is secondarily known to us. Ma'luma bil aras. When I look at this book, what is primarily known to me is the image of the book in my mind, which is present for me as an image. But through that, I come to know about the external book. So this is ma'luma bil aras. This is secondarily known to me, and what is in my mind is primarily known to me. If these two match, this is true. If they don't match, it's false. So Mullah Sadra has developed this idea, this beautiful distinction between two types of haml. Al-hamlu al-awwaliyu dhati and al-hamlu sha'i'u sama. Let me give you another example. Maybe inshallah your question can be answered, and if not, you can ask me a question. For example, we say al-ma'dumu la yukhbaru anh. Non-existence cannot be talked about. You cannot inform about non-existence. Non-existence is non-existence. You can only talk about something that exists. A shay, al-ma'doom, al-mutlaq, something which is absolutely ma'doom. Not, for example, adamu shay'an. If you remember, we said adamul muzaf means adam of something which has existence, then there is distinction. Remember we talked about la mayza fil a'dam min haythu al-adam. Yeah? But if it is absolutely Adam, you cannot, talk about it, you cannot think about it. Ma'dum mutlaq. But then a person says, the very fact that you say al-ma'dum al-mutlaq la yukhbaru an contradicts what you say. Say why? He said because you actually talked about al-ma'dum al-mutlaq. You say la yukhbaru an. This la yukhbaru an is khabar for al-ma'dum al-mutlaq. When you say you cannot talk about ma'dum al-mutlaq, this by itself is a talk about ma'dum al-mutlaq. The same thing we said about al-juz'i. What is the answer? Here we are talking about the concept of ma'dum mutlaq. We are talking about ma'dum mutlaq bil haml al-awwaliyya dhati. Otherwise, the instance of ma'dum mutlaq, you cannot talk about it. So we use the concept of ma'dum mutlaq to explain the situation of real ma'dum mutlaq. Okay? Or for example, I say, fire cannot come to my mind. Then the person says, okay, this fire is now in your mind because the mawzu is the subject of this sentence and the sentence in the mind. Say, what I say, when I say fire cannot come to my mind means real fire. Bilhaml al-sha'ir. But the concept of fire is not fire. Although it is the concept of fire. So the concept of fire is the concept of fire, not the concept of water. But the concept of fire, although it's the concept of fire, is not fire. Okay?
That's right.
But does it mean that
It's not real.
when we are thinking about the fire, is when the fire, we are starting to make the mental image of the fire.
Yes,
and it
but-
cannot exist in
But
reality.
you don't bring fire into your mind. Fire doesn't come to your mind. But you are able to think about fire. You are able to discuss fire, but real fire, no. So what is amazing is that our mind, when talks or studies or analyzes fire, it's fire, not about something else. But at the same time, it's not fire.
So do exist or do not exist when we are thinking about fire? We are thinking something is not, it doesn't mean that it do not exist in our mind. It
Yes.
does not exist in experience.
So fire bilhaml al-sha'ir means instance of fire is not in your mind. But fire bilhaml al-awwali, the concept of fire is in your mind.
It exists.
But this type of existence is wujud al-zihni. It's not real existence. So this is why when you think of fire, you would not, be burning yourself, for example. You can think of fire, even a very big fire, and feel very cold. Yeah? You can think of food and still be hungry. Actually, the more you think about food, the more you become hungry.
More frequently.
Yes? Someone raised it. Okay. So, this is the distinction that Mullah Sadra makes between two types of ham. So, going back to the question that how something belongs to two different types of categories, for example, although they are all, distinct from each other, we say it's not really a matter of belonging to two categories. One is bilhaml al-awwali, the other is bilhaml al-sha'ir. That knowledge that we have, that mental image that we have, that concept that we have, it's kayf nafsani because it is a kind of araz that happens to my soul, to my mind. Like, when you are happy, what is this happiness? It's a quality for your soul. It's a condition. It's a aras. It's not johar. It's a quality for your soul. When you are fearful, that fear is kayf nafsani. Ilm is also kayf nafsani. A quality for the soul. Someone doesn't have ilm, so it doesn't have this quality. But on the other hand, this kayf nafsani can reflect different things. It can reflect johar, it can reflect kam, kayf, different types of aras. So when it reflects, بالحمل الأولي falls under those categories. ولكن بالحمل الشاي always under one category, and that is كيف نفساني. Okay? So all the images, like for example, if you have photos, if I have it's very simple, I don't think it's difficult to understand. If I have a photo of a car, a photo of water, a photo of flower, each photo shows something different. Photo of car, photo of flower, photo of water. So if I show you, photo of water, I say, what is this? You say water. If I show you photo of car, I say, what is this? You say car. But then, if I say, what is this photo in itself? You say it's paper. Say it's paper. So it's a paper when you look at it as a being. بالحمل الشاي. But it can be a car, it can be flower, it can be water when you look at it in its reflective aspect, the way it represents something. Okay? So these things that we have in our mind are like paper, a photo. They are all similar in being kayf nafsani, but because they reflect different things, they have to correspond also to different categories. But don't tell me, how can something be a paper and water? I say these are two different things. It's a paper by itself, but it's water as it reflects. Okay? I think it's very easy.
Yes, Hamdi Shai means secondary. Is it Hamdi Shai you said?
Secondary in the sense that you are going to the instances.
Sorry, Sheikh, you cannot say it is water. It is a big picture of water. So there is this specific.
It's a picture of water, but it's water.
It is what
I say, what do you see? You see water. You don't say, I see picture of water. You say, I see water.
No, I see a picture of water.
Yeah,
Even if I say
I
see
know,
water,
of course. This is why when we have fire,
yeah.
we said this is not real fire. But I'm saying that it's so much reflecting that you may even forget that you are looking at the picture and not the real thing.
Indeed.
Yeah? So, if I say, is this picture of water or, for example, something else? You say, no, definitely water, not something else. Yeah?
but sorry, Sheikh, by identification, by real identification, we wouldn't say this is water. We would still say, if you go deeper, we would say, well, this is a picture of water.
Yeah.
If you ask us what's this exactly, we wouldn't say again this is water. No, we would say this is picture of water. So we wouldn't we wouldn't say water only.
Yeah. But then if I ask you describe, look at this and describe what you see. Do you describe paper or you describe that thing?
Of course, we say water. Yes. Yeah, but we cannot say this is water and paper. This is
So from one aspect it's paper, from another aspect is water. That aspect which is paper is regardless of what is shown. Whether it is water, whether it's a human being, whether it's a car, it's always paper. But that is not very important for us. You are not interested in being paper, you are interested in what is shown. Yeah? When you buy